1 at 6:02 p.m. Janelle, could you please take roll call?
Bertle,
Here.
Metzmacher,
Here.
Zosky,
Here.
Shumway. Is Mary
Excused.
here yet? If she's excused. Is Shumway excused?
Yes.
Okay. Schmitz
Here.
and Bell.
Here.
Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. Is there anybody? There's nobody zooming in. Okay. Does anybody from the Plan Commission have any comments? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I so move.
Motion by Gretzmacher, second by Bell. All in favor, respond with an aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as published?
So moved.
Motion by Schmitz,
Second.
second by Gretzmacher. On page, sorry, I was scrolling down and forgot I had this note. For the record, on page 3, I would like it notated in the minutes that Berta requested that the document be delivered 1 week earlier than normal. I suppose I should have done that first. So then is Schmitz and Gretzmacher, your motion and second then to approve as amended?
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Okay, item number 1, consider a motion to convene into, do you want to do introductions first, Bo?
Yes, I'd be happy to. With us in the meeting
Just a
tonight,
minute, Bo. Denise, in further up in there, it says that he was then asked to see that a draft of the entire zoning code that contains all the revisions that have been agreed on to date be provided to the Plan Commission members at least 1 week prior. You want that to say Bertle requested that?
Where does it?
On line, it starts on line 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently I read the minutes and missed it. That's nope, that's just fine, Janelle. Thank you for catching that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, Bo.
okay, with us in the Zoom meeting right now is Jeffrey Sanders. Jeff is from Community Planning and Consulting LLC. Jeff, I'll let you say a couple introductory words, but just so the Plan Commission is aware, Jeffrey Sanders has about 28 years of municipal planning experience, and he's authored nearly 100 local plans and land use ordinances. He is here to help us throughout the rest of this zoning code overhaul updates through the moratorium, and hopefully working on a couple other projects with us in the future. Jeff, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bo. Good evening, everyone. Just to clarify, right here's the camera. Hi. Right here's my monitor. So although it looks like I'm ignoring you, I'm looking at all of you. Just a really brief background, because you really don't probably want any more than a brief background. I grew up in Shawano. I spent some time in the Air Force. I spent some time in Los Angeles, came back here and decided to grow up and become an urban planner, which I've been for about 28 years now. As Bo mentioned, I have a little bit of experience in zoning and general planning and some other fun stuff. I don't know nearly as much about your code as I will in the near future. I know quite a bit about your community, as anybody who grows up in this part of the state would. And we spend a lot of time up there, my wife, my daughter, and our 2 dogs. Cats don't come with us when we go to Sister Bay or anywhere else. And really, I think I'm just here tonight to listen and maybe answer whatever questions you might have about my background or what limited assistance I might be able to provide to the village of Sister Bay.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome. I'm hoping that as we discuss things in the code tonight, whether it's changes that we've already made or some other things that have been notated that we're going to be talking about again, that you will chime in with your expertise if you have a better suggestion, something where you're thinking outside of the box. You are here to assist us and to think about the big picture and the changes that we make to the code and how they may affect something good, bad, or otherwise. And as Nate Bell always likes to say, that there are unintended consequences, you know, that sometimes we don't realize until we're in the middle of it. So please chime in at any point in time that, you know, you have something relevant to say or point us in a different direction. That is what you're here for.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so we will go to item 1. Consider a motion to convene into executive session pursuant to Wisconsin State Stats 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with special respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved. Motion by Berto,
Second,
second by Gretzmacher. Berto, yes.
Gretzmacher, yes.
Bell, yes.
Schmitz, yes.
Zashki, yes.
Motion carried.
Now, do you want to pause the recording?
Okay, I will make a motion that we return to open session at 6:45. Motion by Berto,
Second,
second by Bell. Berto, yes.
Gretzmacher,
yes.
yes.
Schmitz, yes.
Oh, Zashki,
drop.
yes.
Bell, yes, if you didn't catch it.
Okay. All right, we are taking no action. Item 4, conducting of a plan commission work session at which several sections of the zoning code, chapter 66 of the municipal code for the village of Sister Bay will be reviewed. So, Bo, are you going to share your screen? I know that I highlighted and questioned a whole bunch of things and have some general notes at the end of the document. I don't
Okay.
know if anybody else made any changes to it.
I made a couple of changes and I put in a bunch of comments.
Okay,
I figured, Denise, let's start from the top and work our way down.
perfect.
It's been going well that way. So just so you know, and I did mention this to you, I know you had this question about highlights of what you needed to address and confirm. They are included in this document. Some highlighting did disappear. Very minor ones. I did double check. I went back through, but when we put all of these documents together to make one document, there was a little bit of a challenge with the formatting of them. And so to put them all into one, we had to just kind of deal with the layout, and we lost just sections of highlighting. But I did go back through the B1, B2, all the sections individually that we worked on and answered those questions or made changes as need to, or highlight them again if we needed to go back. So that was just one of the questions up top. I'm just going to keep going until the next highlighter section comes up. Denise, under temporary uses by the zoning administrator, you added plan commission chair and the president. This for
Right, I think, yeah, I think that there should be 3 people making that decision. I mean, because it's talking about, you know, not going to the plan commission. So I think the plan commission chair should be included in that.
I second that.
Yep.
We need to fix the verbiage on that a little bit. The way that reads to me is you just need any one of those 3 people. It could, there's ambiguity there.
Well, I don't read it that way because it says and the president. Zoning administrator, plan commission chair, and president.
And I'm just saying, if, after what we heard about ambiguity tonight, I would go in and, to me, that means any one of those. Those are the sum total of the people that are allowed to permit it. Yeah, there we go, Bo.
Okay.
Well, devil's advocate here, are we making it too challenging to say 3? I mean, I would be okay with
By
the
all
village
3.
president and the village administrator, just 2, not so Bo and one of the others.
Okay.
The reality is for the whole time I've been here, for much of the time that I've been on the plan commission, the village president has been the plan commission chair. And if we have a plan commission chair that's not seeing eye to eye with the village president, we're gonna have a very challenging time.
You want it to read by the following officials: zoning administrator, plan commission chair, and the president, in the event that the plan commission chair and the president are the same individuals.
How does everybody else feel about having the village president or the plan commission chair? Or does everybody want and or? I think or is good for me, but
Well, I think the zoning administrator actually should be out of the picture. I think it should be president. I think the 2 key is president and plan commission chair.
I would disagree on that. And I'm not looking at it from my personal perspective, but you want an appointed official to give you that temporary use permit and give you the reasons why or why not.
Okay. Valid point.
And I'm going to say that even if in the future, the zoning administrator, the plan commission chair and the president are the same people, so be it. I'm still comfortable though with both plan commission and president.
Or if what if we temporary uses may be permitted by the following officials unanimously? Zoning administrator, plan commission chair, and the president, if you want all 3. Otherwise, say maybe permitted by 2 of the 3 following.
to be very blunt, I don't really care. I want Bo to be in the loop, and I'm just saying Bo in this place, but we don't need his approval, but we absolutely need him to be informed and knowledgeable and make sure that, try and limit us from doing dumb stuff.
Just so everyone knows, Jeff raised his hand.
Oh, go ahead, because I didn't see that, because I'm looking at the document. So if anybody, just chime in, interrupt us.
Thank you. That's not something I'm going to be comfortable doing for a while.
Okay,
So this issue, not temporary uses, but who reviews, who approves, who's necessary to give the thumbs up, comes up a lot, as you might suspect, in plan commissions across the state. And I'm not weighing in on, it's a policy decision, so it's up to you as a body. But what I can say is, if the issue in this specific instance, if the issue of temporary uses and temporary structures is well written and well laid out in your ordinance, and if the application form, so the application for a temporary use or structure, is well crafted, consistent with how it's in the ordinance, and if you as a plan commission have reviewed and approved that application form, then you can get that, you can take that responsibility away and give it to the zoning administrator. In the vast majority of communities I work in, including those where I'm the zoning administrator, the zoning administrator does all the temporary use and temporary structure stuff. Now, that's not an argument for the village of Sister Bay to do that. I don't mean it that way. I'm just saying the discussion about whether it should be 1 or 2 or 3 unanimous might be, you might want to focus that a little bit more on the process, because if you as a plan commission are comfortable with the process, if it's a well-written, tight application process, then the zoning administrator is doing nothing more than making sure the process is followed. And if that's the case, then it doesn't matter whether it's the zoning administrator doing it or the plan commission chair or the village president or anybody else. So
but
that's,
see, I don't know that any of this, the way that it's worded, is even coming to the plan commission.
No, that's, I think
the
what-
argument would be that it would not actually. Once you amend the zoning ordinance, once the plan commission is comfortable with the amended temporary use section of the zoning ordinance, and once the plan commission is weighed in on the process for submitting an application, reviewing it and deciding upon it, if you're comfortable with that, then it's just a question whether you believe the zoning administrator, whoever is fulfilling that responsibility, is qualified and capable of administering the zoning ordinance. If the answer is yes, then there's really no need for, this is a relatively minor issue. I'm not saying it isn't fraught with peril, because everything in the zoning ordinance can be. But it's one of those things where plan commissions often say, listen, this is not, we don't need this on our schedule. We don't need to burden ourselves with this. Let's defer it to staff.
See, because our whole code needs to be rewritten, I guess I would keep all three in there right now until we rewrite, because I don't really know what the process is
I would agree with Denise on this one for a short term, right? If we
for
need-
short term.
Yeah, if we need to do a short-term fix, this is a good one because everyone's comfortable with, the board president and plan commission chair signing off as well as the zoning administrator. But once we go through, and Jeff, I've kind of alluded to this in our previous conversations, once we have the time to go through the entire zoning code and we can review the permits, then plan commission may feel comfortable with, yes, I like this permit, I like this plan, and I like the authority behind it.
Do we have consensus that temporarily we'll leave all three in there?
I absolutely hear what Jeff is saying, that we don't want somebody to be, we want the process to work. We don't want decisions to be made by somebody that, and made judgments being made. We want you to be the process. So you set up the process once and everything goes through that.
Right,
I
Right.
absolutely understand that. I guess I wonder how often does this temporary use come up, because I wonder, can we just not have it until we can get it rewritten? Because I don't know how many times we've said, oh, well, we need to rewrite the code. And yes, we've rewritten parts of the code, but we haven't gotten to everything ever.
No, wait,
Right.
I would say that we would need to keep the temporary uses section in here. Specifically, I know in the summer we get things like tents often, construction, small signs, things like that. We do receive a number of those. So to completely remove those could put a burden on plan commission, a lot of plan commission meetings, and things of that nature.
What if the first sentence said temporary uses may be permitted by the plan commission after review of site, and we just took out everything from the following officials all the way through?
No, we don't want to go to the plan commission,
Doesn't need to.
right?
They're temporary.
I mean, if they want to put a bouncy house out for Marina Fest, I don't need to see it.
And it's the job of the zoning administrator and through the process of the permit to determine whether it is an approved temporary use and if the
Yeah.
location is approved.
So let's leave it like this and then make sure that the actual permit is airtight,
Okay.
and then switch back.
And then I see the 10 days highlighted. I really don't like the 10 days.
No, I don't either. That is ridiculous.
I
So
would
they can
say,
only do the use for 14 days. And I would think within 2 days, everything needs to be removed.
Yeah,
let's say 48 hours. Let's be clear.
Okay,
yeah, 48 hours.
48 hours of the end of the event,
Yeah,
or its use, or whatever it is.
if it's Fall Fest, they can get done, they can sober up, and they can get right in the head, and then they can come back the day afterwards.
Excellent.
Well, they can come back the day afterwards.
Fair enough, Rob.
Okay. This is highlighted.
I really don't, well, I didn't highlight real estate sales. What does that really mean?
Rental field offices or?
No, before it, real estate sales. I did not highlight it, but I didn't really know what does that mean?
I'm not sure.
So should we just drop the real estate sales and just start with
Yeah.
rental?
I think so. And then I was questioning rental field offices or model homes. Why would we allow that? Is there a reason? Because I think then all of number one can be stricken. If we don't know what real estate sales means,
The only thing I could think of, and I could be wrong, would be because it's a temporary use, you may have someone who's transitioning between offices and using their home as a real estate office or a rental
that's
field.
home occupation, that would fall under that.
I'd be okay with removing this.
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's get rid of it.
take out one in totality.
Can you unhighlight then? Okay,
Okay, flea markets.
we talked about flea markets when we were
They're down in the
doing
definitions.
in definitions. And to tell you the truth, I did this Saturday night and I'd worked an 11-hour day. And so for me now to remember why I highlighted that, I'm having a blank. So I guess it couldn't have been that important. And what do we define as outdoor group assemblies? And if we can define that, is there better words to use?
In my opinion, I would just remove outdoor group assemblies and just leave it as flea markets, concerts, and festivals because we're talking about temporary uses. You don't want to create, like we just said, ambiguity or leave this gray area open.
Okay.
Do it.
Is there a reason why we're saying flea markets instead of just markets? Do we prefer flea markets? Is there a good definition for that?
Right, like a farmer's market or something.
Well, we refer to it in definitions, don't we?
Flea market is defined any premises where the principal use is the sale of new or used household goods, personal effects, tools, artwork, small household appliances, and similar merchandise, equipment, or objects in small quantities in broken lots or parcels, not in bulk, for the use or consumption by the immediate purchaser. Flea markets may be conducted within a structure or in the open air. Rummage sales and garage sales are not considered flea markets.
Okay.
Okay, what?
I mean, I don't particularly enjoy the term flea market, but it's defined, so okay, it should stay as is.
Okay,
All right, it looks like you made some other changes in number 5 as well. I'm just gonna remove this highlight too, so I don't get.
yep. Yeah, if we've talked about something, I think the highlights then just need to
I
go
want-
away.
Top to bottom.
Take the hyphen out after and.
Where's? That's a
That's a
strike.
comma.
There's a comma and then there's a hyphen above it.
No, that's the strike through because we're redlining the document. It'll disappear when we accept the changes.
Okay,
Do we really want circuses
No.
and animal shows?
what's a circus without an animal show?
So I do remember it was the Friday after Thanksgiving, I think 3 or 4 years ago. They had reindeer down by the light tunnel. Would that be considered an animal show? Because it was kind of cool. They had reindeer then, but
Well, you didn't have to pay to get in, did you?
no.
Okay, I would consider an animal show, a circus, or a carnival something that you have to pay for. So if that was part of an event that SBAA does, we must have Parks, Property and Streets approved that.
Okay. So that's
Okay.
the same thing would go for the roofing of the goats if you ever do that again.
Right.
We had people angry because we didn't do it this year.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Okay,
I have a question,
go ahead.
I have a question where the cursor is now on 7.
Okay, well, can we finish with 5?
Oh, okay, I thought we were, okay, that's, sorry.
We
Denise.
do we have general consensus to delete
Yeah.
everything that's in purple?
Yes,
Yep.
Yes,
Do you want to keep carnivals in there? I just want to clarify.
Well, I left it in there just because I don't know how SBAA is advancing with, the 75th anniversary of Fall Festival this year. And they were going to try to do some carnival rides, and we did have a Ferris wheel a
Oh,
few
yeah.
years ago. So that's why I left it there.
So we'll leave it there.
Well,
Okay.
that's good to-
Okay, now we can go to 7.
why wouldn't we just want flea markets and farmers markets in the same areas? Because listening to what the definition of a flea market is, I can't think of anything in that definition I heard read that makes that more special than a farmer's market or more pertinent to B2. What would the harm be in having a farmer's market in B2?
Or
Or
downtown.
B3? Yeah, what would the harm be?
I agree. I think we can delete that and put it into 4 flea markets and farmers markets.
In all those zones? Right?
Yeah,
B1, B2, B3, or CS1?
Let's just call them F markets. Maybe not.
thank you, Nate.
Farmers market just getting included in. Okay. I see.
Oh,
Add
yeah,
legal-
I was supposed to talk about that and closed.
Well, why don't you talk to me about it and then I could make a change. It is a living document.
Okay,
So I'll just say. Okay,
okay. And there's a couple of places where I have that add legal verbiage, and it all applies to the same conversation.
okay, sounds good. All right. The next thing highlighted, under lots abutting other districts, you have not more than 60 feet. You have the 60 highlighted.
It was just a question that I guess I wanted the plan commission to chime in. Do we feel that that's appropriate, or should it be more, or should it be less?
I guess I don't think that it should be anything. I think you should be held to the standards for that district.
But this is, so this would be something similar kind of to the piece of property in the corner of Fieldcrest and the highway where Dollar General wanted to build. So, but the property behind it was also, I believe, B1. Okay, so this would not apply. But it was, I think, the next parcel that then became R1. So I was thinking, where we have some highway commercial property butting up to residential, it was just a question, is 60 feet appropriate? I certainly didn't want to go less.
What I'm hearing in your comment, Denise, is your perception, which to me is valid, that there should be some tangible boundary between two such areas. Am I reading your?
Right, and so I
correctly?
just,
No, it should be, if it's gonna be anything, I would think it should be more than 60 feet.
I mean, we
So-
also do have the buffer yard right below it that talks about another 20 feet in addition to the required. So now we are talking about 80 feet.
80 feet.
So just, you know, I'm
But-
fine with the 60, but I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention to make sure that we were still okay with that.
I'm looking at the zoning map. And I'm guessing that particularly on the 42 corridor, this is where this could come into play?
Yes,
Okay. And 57.
and 57. I mean, so we have, 80 feet. That's a pretty good distance.
You reduce the piece of property so that it's unbuildable.
Good.
I don't know. I don't know.
When you think of the other setbacks from the highway, from access roads.
So let's just look up.
What do you consider, and I'm just asking, just to get perspective, a less restrictive district? What do you consider to be the less restrictive district?
Probably which setbacks are smaller.
Okay, if you go B1 to R1, is that the biggest change? I'm just looking again at the map here.
So I'm looking at, so in B1, the front building setback is 45 feet from the center line of the road. And there shall be a minimum front setback of at least 40 feet from the edge of an easement or edge of pavement for buildings not on a public street. Okay, but the side setback in B1, 10 feet. However, this may be increased upon the recommendation of the village engineer in order to accommodate the required grading between properties. And the rear setback is 20. So front is
45.
45, side is 10. That's pretty small. And rear is 20. So most likely it's going to be your rear and side yards that would be probably affected the most, not the front.
So can I jump in with a question to your point, Denise?
Yeah,
So what I'm envisioning in that statement is, if there's a single family residence homeowner established with children playing in a yard in R1, I would think that they would take umbrage to a new development in the general business district being 60 feet from them.
correct. Right. I wasn't personally looking at reducing it.
So I guess my question, going back to my question is, it just seems like if we're going to stipulate something, it needs to be significant enough that the business developer would understand, here's the deal. There's X amount of space between you and that yard. And to me, I don't know what the right number is. Is it 200 feet? I just 60, 80, to me.
Well, then if that's what it is, then I guess, if we're not hearing any real compelling things, and maybe I'm sorry I brought it up, that we just leave it. And if we, it's something that we'll talk about when we review the whole entire code. We're talking about 80 feet. And so I'm okay.
I look at this as, why should we allow a cause for alarm among an established homeowner because a new business development wants to come in? And that's, you know, that's just where I'm coming from, but I'm fine to move along and
Okay,
go
Yes,
on.
I just want to throw one thing out there and then I'll let it die for now. This is going to be a place that is not, the zoning hasn't changed. Whoever lives there likely moved there or bought it when it was adjoining another district. So I think there's a certain element of that. I hear what you're saying, and I think that there's some, I think that it's a longer discussion, and we'd actually, I would love to see it when we do it, that we look at an example that's not happening and say, this is how the rubber meets the road on this regulation, so we can really understand it.
yes,
Yep.
absolutely. I agree,
Sounds
Nate.
good. Sounds good, Nate.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, this is all landscaping shall be maintained by the owner or operator to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator. It looks like Denise, you made a change. You added.
Yes, because we had a problem with this. Well, maybe not specifically to this, but we had a piece of property, if everybody remembers, out on Highway 57 when Zeke was administrator and we didn't like the berm. And he told him that he had to go plant something out there, but Zeke didn't tell him specifically what to plant or how to plant. And then we just ended up with this really ugly mess of a berm. And so I don't think it should be up to the zoning administrator. I think it should be actually the entire plan commission. If there's a problem, the entire plan commission needs to chime in and address it and instruct the zoning administrator on how to deal with it.
I am curious to hear what Jeff might have to say about this, because I feel like there should be some sort of framework that we go against and simply just if the plan commission likes it or not. So Jeff, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I have a sign somewhere in here that says when your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So with that in mind, you're going to be using the term site plan review, site plan review, site plan review a lot because it's just the best tool available. If you have again, if an ordinance has a well-written site plan review process in general, but certainly specific to landscaping requirement, one of the elements of that is the issuance of a permit. So a site plan permit is issued and it says, you know, these are the conditions under which this permit is approved. At any point thereafter, if the zoning administrator determines, or any officer of the village determines that there's a potential violation, the nice thing about a permit is the permit can be revoked. And once the permit's revoked, all uses associated with that permit are thereby revoked. Why did I say that? Well, generally, the landscaping requirements will say something like it must be maintained into perpetuity, so that if you require a 6-foot screening hedge between two different districts, it can't just get planted today and then a year from now it's dead. It must be maintained for the duration of those uses. And that's typically something staff would do, not plan commission, because the plan commission would actually place the requirements on the site plan review. And then it would be up to the zoning administrator to administer and enforce those requirements. So given the way the ordinance is now, I don't really have a strong opinion on which way it should go. But at some point in the future, if you do decide to reconstruct this ordinance, that would be something I'd recommend. Establish the appropriate visual diminishment standards within the site plan review process or landscaping requirement, and then just make sure one of the caveats, or not caveats, I should say, one of the requirements of the permit is that it must be maintained over time.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if our development agreements it says
and-
that specifically. So, okay, we can take out plan commission. And so that's wording then that we will have to think about adding to our development agreements.
I like the idea.
Well, yeah, do we even need 12 if the standard development agreement just reads all landscaping shall be maintained by the owner or operator to the satisfaction of the plan commission?
No, you don't need it because they have to meet the development agreement requirements.
And would that solve your multi eyes on the subject, Denise, if we just remove 12 from here and in the development agreement, insert all landscaping shall be maintained by the owner or operator to the satisfaction of the plan commission, period?
in perpetuity.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you know, development agreements get filed,
That's exactly what we were
not
going.
remembered, not, you know, so I guess I would still like to leave it in there. So Bo, can't you just remove plan commission?
I did.
No, but I mean, remove it in its entirety.
No, because I'm tracking my changes.
That's why it's crossed off, Denise.
Okay,
It's just for reference. So once I accept the track changes, it'll disappear.
okay, okay, let's have a short conversation about that. I don't know that you can accept track changes on everything, because isn't when we go to public hearing, don't we want to highlight what it is that we've changed? People that want to look at this will not know what it said before and know our changes.
Well, that's why there's going to be red lines and additions where they've been made.
Okay, I know, but because I made that one, it wasn't part of the old one. It's not going to be part of the new one. That's why I'm saying, can't you just tell it to accept?
Oh, just remove it. Okay.
Yes,
I'd have to yes, I can do this. Hold on. I see what you're saying.
right, because we don't need a lot of other stuff of our notes or things if it wasn't in the original code and we've decided to not insert it into this section. Because you should, yeah, just be able to hit accept.
I am going to play it carefully. I did it that way because I don't want to mess any of the other changes up that we've made so far.
Are the other changes still there? Did you scroll up?
I just turned it off and then
Okay.
turned it back on.
Okay, got it.
I see
okay.
where you're saying now, though. Okay, moving on. Okay, parking lots.
we just went past, can we go back to where we were for a minute? All right. Point 13. Isn't the second sentence in point 13 sufficient to convey the message? I understand the second sentence very clear. I don't have any idea on God's green earth what the first sentence really means. And do we really want, if to Jeff's point about that makes so much sense about remove ambiguity, what could be more ambiguous than sufficiently opaque?
Well, you're talking about headlights versus overhead lighting.
Okay, then how is a yard opaque if you got grass on it?
Because it's
Right? 'Cause
talking
that's what
about
a yard
the
has is
buffer.
grass, right? So what do I have to
No,
grow?
it's talking
Opaque
about the
grass?
buffer yard.
Yeah. Well, what is
Okay.
a buffer yard?
The buffer yard is not the grass.
What is it?
The buffer yard is either a fence or trees or shrubs. That is what a buffer yard is.
Okay,
Yeah, you go back to number 1.
Opaque isn't the right word, I think is.
yeah,
what-
so how do I make trees or shrubs opaque or sufficiently opaque?
You
So
have
what it
transparent. or
sounds like what you're
translucent
saying
shrubs?
is where the land adjacent to the buffer yard is a parking lot, the buffer yard shall be sufficient to prevent the penetration of headlight glare,
Okay,
right?
yep,
The buffer yard shall be sufficient to prevent the penetration of headlight glare,
Okay.
or shall sufficiently prevent the penetration. But to me, shall be sufficient to prevent makes the most sense, because then there's no ambiguity. If it comes up and somebody says, hey, this glare is getting through there, you go by at night, it's either getting through or it's not.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. Go into the next change. Parking lots.
So I don't know who did the 125, but then the comment that I put there, I used a handy dandy Google Maps just to give you a reference. And if you could click on the comment, Or, okay, I can't see it, okay. So if you draw a line from the water to the, and I know it's not the Casperson lot anymore, but we know where that is. That's that distance. But then the parking lot that is adjacent to our amphitheater, that's, what did I put in there? I can't read what I put in
Your
there.
note says Casperson lot is 154 feet. Village stage parking is 136 feet. Should we go to 140?
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to give somebody,
We talked about this in a previous work session, and I think Nate used
The GIS.
the GIS map to determine that 125 feet was the farthest that an existing parking lot was already, and I think it was Yacht Club.
okay,
I don't disagree, though, that the parking by the band shell is too close to the water. But I don't know if we want to purposefully have something that is, you know, pre-existing non-conforming, or if that causes us further issues.
Yeah, I would hate to do that also.
okay, then I erase my comment.
Okay,
And you'll unhighlight conditional use permit?
yep, doing that now. I didn't do that before because I didn't know if you still wanted to come back to it.
That's okay. But I mean, now that we're going through
Yep.
this again and we all agree that we can, you know, clean it up a little bit more.
Yep. Okay, now we're into the residential districts, so I'll remove these. And then I know you have a note right there, so we can stop here. Okay, it looks like Denise made a change. She added 4 over 30 days, no short-term rentals will be allowed, and then need to rewrite here. And then there's a guest user comment on this, and it says only one of the 2 units may be rented. Also duration SB consistent with Wisconsin STR law.
That was mine. I was looking at that handy dandy handout you sent out for the meeting we didn't have that says what Wisconsin agrees, and it says what you can do and can't do. And I read that as saying we cannot, it said that we cannot prohibit rentals of 7 to 29 consecutive days.
Correct, but this, when we authorized a second dwelling unit for a conditional use permit, we are allowed by law because it's a conditional use permit.
Okay,
And this would be, so this is referencing the same thing. It's not somebody's main home. It's a second dwelling unit that the Plan Commission has given approval to. And so I just thought that we needed to define it a little bit more.
sure.
Now,
Yeah.
and I wrote need to rewrite because maybe there's other better verbiage. Or it's as simple as that. It can't be rented or leased.
Well, on Maple, we allowed the guy to move from his house into the second unit.
Right,
Correct.
but there's still only one rental between the 2 units.
This is specifically saying they can't rent out the secondary dwelling unit.
Oh, wait, it's not for over 30 days. It should be for under 30 days.
Well, actually, the way
Oh,
that
if it was may not be, it would be under.
it says it, a second dwelling unit may be rented or leased.
For over 30
Oh,
days.
yeah, okay.
The only
Or-
thing
so-
the only thing there that I would say, Denise, about cleaning the verbiage up there, I would say no rental of a lesser term will be allowed. Because if you got somebody who really wanted to try and weasel around, they could tell somebody, you know, if somebody comes and says, well, I only want it for a week. Well, here's the deal. We're just going to sign a 30-day, but then you can go ahead and, you know, move out after 7 days and we'll fix the paperwork. He signed an agreement for over 30 days, knowing he was going to be there less, and they fixed it later. Because, and then the guy could come back and say, well, no, it wasn't a short-term rental. There was a problem.
But I think
And
that
then-
if they did that, they'd be that'd be trying to game the tourism zone as well. And I mean, I think if people could have done that, they would have done it by now. To get out of the tourism zone tax. But I had another thought on this is we do have a number of things that we can restrict on short-term rentals. Is there a way that we could take and give somebody the permission to have that second dwelling unit, but then have the short-term rental regulations change on that piece of property so that we make it a little bit more challenging to rent that, or not more challenging, so we have a little bit higher request and a higher standard that may make less people inclined to do a short-term rental on that area. Say, you have to do at least 7 days. You have to get this sort of permit. You have to use every tool that we have in the toolbox, because we do have some. They're not very, very precise tools that feel very blunt objects, but maybe using some of those blunt objects to permit that second dwelling would be beneficial.
How about this, Nate? I have updated the short-term rental ordinance that I've been working on for, I don't know, 3 months or something like that. Liberty Grove came out with theirs. I got a copy of it. They had a couple of things that I didn't have in my draft. Heidi formatted it better for me because I was having problems. So I'm happy, and we talked about this, I think, at our last meeting also. What I am proposing is very strict. Now, granted, Plan Commission, we'll have lots of debate and conversation on this, but I'm going to ask Bo to send it out to all Plan Commission members, and you can review it. So at least the thought process, and not saying that it's going to stay this way with everything in it as presented, but at least you'll know, I think, in what direction I want to see this ordinance move forward.
And I guess what I would look on there is taking where you're starting and looking at having 2 different versions of it. One
Okay.
for the everywhere else for every place, and then a even stricter version is legally possible for places that we've permitted a second dwelling unit.
Okay.
Okay, I added a note to send out the ordinance draft that you've prepared.
Okay.
I'll mark, I think it's important, and Plan Commission members, as they get this, that understand it's a draft. And this really shouldn't be a public document until it's ready. Till it's presented at the Plan Commission meeting.
And the reason also that I added this was, because of Nate talking about, the problems with R1 zoning and trying to increase density and having properties to be able to have a second dwelling unit and, renting it out to whoever, but just
Long-term
not,
rentals.
right, long-term rentals, not short-term. So,
Okay.
I guess I also want to make sure that, Jeff's not sitting there on a silver bullet that he's holding back, not telling us about, that he's got the solution to short-term rental issues. See if he has any thoughts on this.
I have some thoughts on this, not so much sitting back and holding it. I guess I've not seen the level of creativity that the village has put into this issue before. And back to that primary qualifier and not attorney, right? I'm not sure this would stand up to a legal challenge. So 2017 Wisconsin Act 59, which is the law that Governor Walker signed in place allowing short-term rentals.
Yep.
The statute is actually 660615, or at least it falls under that statute that deals with room tax and forfeitures. And short-term rentals apply to residential dwellings, and the definition in the statutes is any building, structure, or part of the building or structure that is used or intended to be used as a home, residence, or sleeping place by one person or by two or more persons maintaining a common household to the exclusion of all others. So the attorneys I work with, and I've written a number of short-term rental ordinances, are all consistent in their assessment that if it is a dwelling unit, it doesn't matter what the intent of the local government is. If it's a dwelling unit as opposed to lodging, it falls under the authority of the short-term rental law. So what it comes down to is this second dwelling unit, and I presume this is something like an accessory dwelling unit. Is that right?
Correct.
Well, it's a conditional use permit, Jeff.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that.
Okay.
If it's a dwelling unit, if it meets the definition of a dwelling unit, whether it's permitted by right, conditional use, or special use, my understanding through the attorneys I work with is that it falls under the authority and jurisdiction of Wisconsin short-term rental law. The only things that don't are lodging, so hotels, motels, traditional bed and breakfasts, and tourist rooming houses. So again, I certainly could be wrong, and the attorneys.
Yeah,
I
but
work with-
tourist rooming houses they're exactly the same as a second dwelling unit, a tourist rooming house. Under DATCAP.
Again, not consistent with my interpretation, but that doesn't mean mine's right. So
Okay.
the definition of a TRH is all lodging places and tourist cabins and cottages other than hotels and motels in which sleeping accommodations are offered for pay to tourists or transients. So if that second dwelling unit is listed as a rental, the same way, if you go to Estes Park, you can rent a cabin by, Rocky Mountain National Park, then it would fall under Wisconsin's regulations for lodging. If, on the other hand, it's an accessory dwelling unit that I could rent, or it's where, a grandparent lives while the grandchildren live in the main house or something like that, then it's a dwelling unit. And to my knowledge, Wisconsin only has two categories: lodging and dwelling units. And everything in the latter category, again, as I understand it, I absolutely could be wrong. Those have to comply with the requirements of Act 59.
Well, seeing as long as Bo shares his screen, I cannot pull up my draft, and I'm not going to ask him to take it off the screen for me to look at. So we'll have that further conversation once we're off screen.
I guess I wonder, what do you think? Understanding that you're not an attorney and you're not providing a legal opinion, but from your understanding and your dealings with this, do you think it would be possible to have a higher standard for short-term rentals as long as you complied with the short-term rental, the permitted things that we can regulate? So if you have an R1 that's got one unit, you fall under this. You only have to do so many things. And if you have two or more, you have to do all of these things, but they're still following the things that we can regulate according to the short-term rental laws.
Right. I mean, that's a great question. And to my knowledge, I've not experienced any community that's looked at it that way. They've said you're either in or you're out. And what you're saying is, or what you're proposing essentially is, there can be different categories of in. So what the statutes basically say, and everybody's familiar with this, I'm not saying it to teach you, I'm just saying it so we have kind of a common foundation for discussion, is if it's fewer than 7 days, local government can prohibit. So you can prohibit a 2-day rental or a 3-day rental. What you can't prohibit is a rental between 7 and 29. And what you can prohibit is you can set standards in terms of no more than 180 days in a year, and those 180 days can be concurrent or they can be non-concurrent. So there is some flexibility within 66, whatever it was, to make it specific to the needs of the Village of Sister Bay. What I don't believe you can do is to say this type of dwelling unit can be a short-term rental and that type of dwelling unit cannot. Now, if you were to come up with a short-term rental ordinance that was district-based, and then all of those requirements complied with the short-term rental law, sure. So in other words, you may say, we will allow 2-night rentals of two-night short-term rentals in this district, but no fewer than 7-night short-term rentals in that district. That I think probably works.
See, and my
kind-
interpretation is that if they are asking for a conditional use permit for a second dwelling unit, if they were going to rent it out, we would not allow it. We would not give them the conditional use. And it is part of the condition of putting up the second unit that they agree to.
I do understand that. And I mean, we could spend, believe it, and I have, we could spend many, many meetings discussing 2017 Wisconsin Act 67 and how it completely disrupted the way local governments administer and enforce conditional uses. But I think I can make a pretty strong argument that you can't use the conditional use permit in that way. You can't use a CUP. You know, you'd have to meet the, based on the purpose of the ordinance, based upon substantial evidence and measurable if practicable. And any local ordinance that is preempted by a state law cannot be conditioned or cannot be a condition in a conditional use permit. So it would be akin to, yeah, I'm not going to come up with an example, but I believe that won't work. But again, there's certainly attorneys who specialize in stuff. I think Murdoch's probably the biggest one in Wisconsin, a couple others as well. And I can certainly point you in the right direction to talk to people who are far more versed in this than I.
I guess what I'm taking from what I'm looking to do sounds like you think it has a chance of working, of passing legal muster where we have different criteria that's filing short-term rental. That's what I'm taking from what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and I think that I don't think that we're going to resolve it tonight talking about it. I do think that we should get some clear direction legally, you know, but instead of having us have this conversation back and forth, because we do need an attorney in the room to tell us that one,
Correct.
or we need to be
So I-
prepared to get sued. which-
Whether, Bo, whether you talk to Randy or talk to somebody that Jeff recommends, because this is huge and whether or not that we can legally do this, and if we can't through a conditional use permit, then that changes everything.
I would like to speak to an experienced zoning attorney, an attorney that deals with land use. So Jeff, if you have someone, I know you just mentioned them, we can chat after this meeting another time, and I'll get an opinion from that attorney.
I wholeheartedly agree. I want the term legal expert in that field to be used with them. But
Okay.
Denise, I think
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I think that what I'm thinking about might be able to accomplish similar things. It's just varies in degrees of how much we can do.
Correct.
But if you start with that STR, I've got some ideas, and I've got some people I want to bounce some ideas off of that will say, well, this is going to make it less beneficial to do STRs.
Oh, well, everything in the ordinance that I wrote up makes it less beneficial. It's very strict. But it does not so strict that it denies anybody from renting a place out for a weekend. There's nothing like that, like what Sevastopol was trying to do. But strict, and it will cost money to have an STR.
I think rather than simply leave it as Bo gets a hold of Murdoch, the recommendation from Jeff, and has a conversation, I think we should try to engage this specialist and at least give Plan Commission members or the chance to be a part of that phone conversation, so that, to Nate's point, if we're going to get this specialist on the phone at his hourly rate, we should get the most bang for our buck, I think.
I agree, Rob, but I think that actually having the entire plan commission would probably make it be less bang for the buck versus
Okay.
having a appointed list of questions that we need answered.
Well, then we need to get Bo the questions before the phone call.
we should be outlining every phone call we have with an attorney. That's something I've always done, and it's helps save a lot of money and keeps you on track. I agree completely.
Okay, so Bo, can you get rid of need to rewrite and just highlight everything else? Or just leave it if it's gonna take too much time.
Done.
Okay,
Okay. Going down to the next one, we had covenants and restrictions highlighted in here. I know we wanted to go back to this.
well, because I wrote, you know, Liz Pendens. Do we need to add that about covenants and restrictions? If that's what we're doing?
Randy had said that, remember we had that one individual that refused to have his attorney draft the covenants.
Yes.
And so Randy had said the easiest way to get around that is to draft and file a list pendants. So basically then, if anybody was doing a search of that property, they would see that that condition had been imposed by the Plan Commission and would give them fair warning that that's out there. But Randy did warn that, you know, they may say that that's illegal to impose a condition that somebody can't rent their property out. But that's how he told us to go ahead and take care of it.
Okay, but on covenants and restrictions, I mean, do we need to talk about,
According to what Randy told me, you don't have the authority to say anything about the covenants and restrictions of a condominium. You have to have, the only reason we ask for those covenants and restrictions is that in order to record the plat, we have to have them, the register of deeds won't accept them without them.
okay, all right, then you can get rid of my record list pendants.
You want me to leave that highlighted still or no?
No,
Okay, we are in R1, single family residence.
I was trying to remember where it states that you can only have one accessory structure on your property. And the little bit of research that I did through the code, I didn't go through it completely. If anybody remembers where that is.
I just remember it.
I just remembered that it's there and
So
That's,
under principal structure location, it's on page 7 of the zoning code. It's Plan Commission, it's
wait, which page?
on page 7.
7.
I was just trying to do a search and it says Plan Commission may permit more than one structure per lot in other districts where more than one structure is needed.
On page 7, what's the heading? What letter or number?
Looks like it's under subsection F in 66.0303 site and lot restrictions.
Jennifer. Oh, okay.
Under section F, principal structure location. Principal structure
Yeah, but this is talking about accessory.
says only one principal structure shall be located, erected, and moved onto a lot in the single-family residential districts.
Right, but we're not talking about the principal structure. We're talking about an accessory structure.
Okay.
Because if we're allowing second dwelling units as a conditional use permit, I don't know. And to be transparent, I want to put up another shed on my property. But that really has nothing to do with if we're allowing a second residence or dwelling on a property, why could a person not have a garden shed and another shed of some kind?
I don't think there's anything preventing that.
I do remember it. They had to get special
Number
permission
two.
from the plan commission. Okay, so we can come back to that.
Okay, I'm gonna highlight this just so we know.
Okay. Because I don't have the whole document and can't do a control F, which is the easiest way to do instead of going page by page.
I was trying to do that, but I can't find anything related to what you're.
Okay,
Okay, under conditional uses.
so was this something that, because it was in pink, that you were supposed to clarify?
Oh, I think you wanted me to go back to this to look at state regulations to see if that's the minimum.
Right,
There's a few of those I haven't gotten to yet that I need to do. I have a list.
okay,
We did get the response from Randy when it came to solar energy collectors, antennas, churches. And I think that might be,
no, churches, no.
okay,
Churches can be deleted out of this district.
yep. Okay, so are you okay with me just removing the, I wanted to have plan commission look at that and just say, do you want me to remove this or remove the highlight from it?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, okay, you just did accessory structures and garages. Why did you unhighlight that? What was our question about it?
I think I highlighted that one. I didn't, when we came back and we talked about solar collectors, I think I said, I highlighted it to see if we wanted to keep that or remove that. Because we were going through conditional uses and at the time we were talking about what did we want to keep and what did we want to take out as a conditional use.
Okay.
Bo, were you
So
proposing?
what is that amendment then under accessory structures and garages? That's at the back of the code somewhere, isn't it? All the amendments, and it should say specifically what was amended.
Yeah, changes and amendments section. And then Jeff has his hand raised, by the way.
Okay. Go ahead, Jeff.
When the discussion regarding solar energy systems, was it to remove it as a conditional use and make it a permitted use, or was it to remove it as a use altogether?
I think we just had a question on, as an accessory structure, I think we wanted to have, I thought, more conversation about it, but still have it be a conditional use because we wanted to know where and how big and everything else. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah.
Denise, I went through that change that you're talking about, the 11, 17, 15. It says accessory buildings and front yard setback area. And
Yep,
then,
I see that too. So it's B3E. And then a separate section, 0311 C1, conditional uses in the R1
Setbacks.
setbacks. Oh, that's why Ken Church can't add on to his garage, correct?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Do you want to get your, remove your must allow?
Yes.
In the permitted accessory uses for, I think we're saying that you can put one accessory business, residential, one accessory as a single family unit in one of the B districts. So that's the one time we talked about how many that I found so far.
Bo, on line 51, before the word utilities, you need to hit enter because it popped up. There you go.
Okay.
Can you say that again, David?
I was, while you were talking about that, I was searching the document over on my other computer here looking for accessory, and I found down in
You know what page number?
it's in B1. No, I can't see pages on mine.
Okay,
But it's permitted accessory uses, and we're saying that one single family dwelling, or you can do it if it's a residential, but it's one on a B1 lot. So that's the first time I've found where we've actually talked about how many,
okay,
but I'll
But
keep
that-
looking.
okay.
There's 116 references to accessory.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll come back to that.
Okay.
All right, so again, lot area and width, add legal verbiage, which goes back to that other thing we need to talk about, or Bo and I'll talk about. The reason that I highlighted this 900 square feet is because we got rid of the dimensions from Nate's debate about the size of any units in a mixed use or an accessory residential. And so I was wondering, do we want to change the square feet of any principal residential building? Or do we want to leave it as
I think we should. That'll shock everyone I know.
so it's because of all your conversation, Nate, that made me then rethink the minimum, which also then goes along with line 58, that, you know, it's got to be 24 feet wide.
I guess I would love to take advantage of Jeff being here and say, Jeff, are there any unintended consequences of changing the minimum floor area, or what's your recommended practice for this?
So one of the things I've learned is there's always unintended consequences, period. So the answer to that question is yes, but the ones that come to mind, not on traditional lots. Let me answer your question at least preliminarily with a question of my own. What is the village's preferences when it comes to single family dwellings? Is there a size that would be too small a footprint? For instance, I'm assuming you're not allowing tiny houses, right?
Well,
200
this
right.
particular, we're in R1 right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this criteria does not allow tiny houses. And if somebody, usually tiny houses though are, I don't know, would you buy a 20,000 square foot R1 lot to put a tiny house on?
And I
I
should
don't know.
clarify, my question wasn't so much about tiny houses as it was, let me approach it. Where communities tend to have larger, or excuse me, smaller square footprints are very often lake lot communities. So one of my clients is the town of West Bend, and on Big Cedar and Little Cedar Lake, they have many, many lots that are, you know, less than 50 feet wide on the lake. So they will allow a residential building that is quite small. Now, nobody builds a small one. They build a small footprint. They just make it taller, right? So I guess this is a policy question, and I would defer to the 7 of you regarding whether it should be 900 higher or lower.
I guess the argument I've had is that we have an extreme issue with housing. And to set up these minimums, we're simply raising the barrier to entry for everyone. And it's to our own detriment. Actually, I don't really care for R1 zoning in general. I think that is part of the issue, but that's beyond this. This is just talking about R1. So I would be inclined to say that should be 500 feet or abolish it altogether.
That's a good point. So from an affordability standpoint, the lower that number is, the more affordable it becomes. But with the understanding, as Chair Berto mentioned, if you're talking about a large lot, the market's going to say what will go on that lot, right? A larger lot, I should say. Many communities, including a couple of my clients, are looking at abandoning the whole concept of single-family dwelling units altogether and saying in a residential use, you can do anything. Portland, the state of California have just abolished single-family residential zoning. And that is the direction. I think the Twin Cities have done so too. So I'm not suggesting that this is a direction for the village to go, but it's something to kind of inform the discussion that you're having right now.
I think that's the direction Nate would like to see us go.
Yeah, I think that I'm not just the only crazy one out there. I think there's some other people in this country that are seeing things that way. So I guess what could possibly come back to get us if we had it set to no minimum square footage? I mean, the market is going to dictate a minimum size. Somebody's not going to, I mean, lots have gone up tremendously in value in Sister Bay in the last 2 years. So that the market forces are going to push it to be a minimum size unless somebody has money and just wants a small house. And at that point, does it matter?
Well, would we be okay then to use the same verbiage we have elsewhere on the accessory, where we just say the house has to have a kitchen and at least one bathroom?
Yeah.
Another way of addressing that will just be make sure the building inspector approves it as compliant with the UDC.
The less words, the better, as long as it accomplishes our goal.
So we could say, instead of deleting it in its entirety, could we reverb it and say there is no minimum floor area? So, I mean, it draws attention to it instead of it not saying anything. There is no minimum floor area required, whatever size house you want to build. I mean, if you think back, you know, years and years ago, and maybe this was more so on the waterfront when there were, you know, a lot of small cottages and everything, you know, it wouldn't be the worst thing. I doubt that it's going to happen, but.
Well, I think if we're going to do no minimum floor, we have to make sure then we control how many accessory uses will go on there, because if they're going to put a tiny house on a standard lot, they're going to want to put, they might want to put something else there too.
Right, I would that's a really good point, David. I would probably say that your accessory structures cannot be larger than the principal structure.
I'm just writing these as notes. We can change it as we need to.
So then is my principal structure the structure that was first built? Can I change a principal structure if I decide, hey, I want to build a new principal structure? Now it'll be bigger?
Probably, as long as you don't use your first principal structure as a dwelling unit, unless you got a conditional use permit.
Okay.
You know, they'd have to, right?
So your the principal unit would be the house or the place where there's the sleeping quarters effectively.
Right.
But then somebody could come back if we had a conditional use that led them to an accessory structure. They could build something bigger than the first one, and I would think they'd be able to flip-flop that and say this is.
Yeah, the first thing that pops into my head is someone builds a smaller home, but then puts a larger pole barn out on their property. That happens.
But this is also R1. I doubt we're gonna end up with a pole barn in R1.
Mhm.
If you put a smaller home on the property, you might have room for it.
Well, you might, yeah.
It could change the dynamic. There's a good chance that all of this is not gonna have any impact on what goes on in Sister Bay. At least. to
But at
me.
least it shows vision, right,
Yeah.
Nate?
Yes, and who knows what's gonna happen 20 years from now? If we give them options. If they don't have options, they definitely won't use them.
Right.
Why don't we revisit this one? I'll highlight it and we revisit this one because I think this one could use a little more thought.
Sounds like a good idea.
I'm gonna leave the 900 highlighted
Mhm.
in the 24.
Okay.
Just so you know, Denise, it is 8. I don't know.
Oh, are you kidding? What page only are we on?
We're on page 7.
Ugh.
Oh. And it's a 50-page document?
But a lot of pages do not have changes on them.
Can anybody go for 15 more minutes? Nate?
Here,
If I get 2 minutes right here, I'll get you 15 more.
If
Sure.
what?
I need to step away for 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right. Scroll, Bo.
There's a question right here. It says, do we want to make the open space pervious? In line 61.
That's my comment. It was just, I know we did that in the B1s. It might not be necessary, but I just wanted to raise it one last time.
I think with the balance being left as open space, it kind of answers your question.
I agree.
Okay, drop it.
You removed, oh, section was twice, it's fine.
So get rid of it.
One sec, sorry. Okay. Then the next one, guest user changed this dwellings and subdivisions and turned it into a development. I think that
Yeah,
was,
we all did that a while ago.
yep, I think the blue is that one. All right. Berms, you just changed the grammar on that one. And then
Correct.
this in the section is put on line 71.
Right. Why is R2, this is our section R1. Why do we care what's going on in R2 and R4?
Hmm.
And I can't believe I didn't catch that the first time through.
I would agree. As long as we have it in R2 and R4, let's get rid of it.
Going down. This can go. Remove churches, and then this came up again. This is in, just want to make sure I'm correct. Yep, this is in the R2 multifamily. The same highlighted section came up. Do you want me to highlight this as well so we revisit it in this section?
Yes.
Okay. You removed the minimum setback for churches in the R2 district because we removed the churches from the R2 district. And then you highlighted 6 units per acre on the density.
So back to what Nate's been talking about. So multifamily is 6.2 restrictive.
Yes.
What's the magic number?
I'm gonna do some math here and think about that one. So we're saying 6 is. We're saying 7,200 square feet per structure at 6. I guess the density for me is gonna be a function of green space as well, because if it is, 1 story, that's depending on the size of the units, I mean, that's gonna be an issue. The other component of density for it to make sense is it needs to have vertical density too. It can't just sprawl out.
So R4 is 4,500 square feet of a lot, correct?
I think we had R4 defined yet, did we?
Yeah, it is defined.
So are we out of R1?
Yes, we're in R2 right now.
Okay.
R4. It's only allowed as a PUD, and its lot area is a minimum of 4,500 square feet with a width of at least 45 feet, and corners have to be 55 feet.
And what is our, does it say, I'm trying to find, what is our green space? Do we have one?
I'd like to take advantage of Jeff here again and say, Jeff, if we want to, the goal is to make housing more accessible in Sister Bay. My push is to increase density because dense housing is generally better on a number of things, and it's also more affordable. What would help us get to that goal?
That is such a simple question, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
I mean, there's no one answer. It's the size of houses, the size of lots, the density, and all those other things that would fall under the broad umbrella of flexibility. Allowing ADUs is a huge step, right? The village is not, you're at the forefront of that in Wisconsin, right? It's something that was ubiquitous in the 50s and pre-50s, but now it's uncommon. I don't know what I can add beyond that. I can say that there's someone I work with quite frequently. I've mentioned to Bo, his name's Andrew Dane. One of his specialties, he's a single sole source, nice, can't even talk, sole proprietor LLC like me. And one of his specialties is missing middle and that kind of increasing density, increasing affordability housing stuff. So I'm not sure you want to bring someone else like me in. Maybe you want to bring someone else instead of me, but he's someone who'd be better at answering that question than I.
Do you think that increasing that, I mean, it seems simple, but it's worth asking you, increasing that number of units per acre is going to have largely a positive impact on increasing affordability and to that end? Is that accurate, or do you think we're doing something that's not going to help that?
I mean, it's generally accurate. For instance, if you built a 10-story condominium complex, it would be incredibly high density, but if it was right on the lake, the units would be incredibly expensive and you wouldn't do anything for affordability. So it's not just density, but clearly if you can get away from large lots with single principal structures on them, which is the least affordable option, to smaller lots with smaller principal structures on them, that level of density, absolutely. Vertical density, it gets a little bit more complicated because, it's part of it's the market, right? Is the market in Sister Bay going to build up at an affordable rate? I don't know your community well enough to say with certainty.
Nate?
Yeah, I guess that I think that we should probably change that to 10 per acre, but we need to make sure that we've got the green space kept in mind there, because if we just have a lot that is just buildings, that's not good either.
Right, I think that we don't determine the units. Because on page 18 in R2, it says, and maybe this is where we also need to go back and in all the zoning districts, and I know I'm making more work for us, we need to readdress FAR or get rid of FAR or have a big conversation about FAR. The total of the floor area on all floors of the principal residential building and all accessory buildings, including the required parking, driveways, and sidewalks, shall not exceed 40% of the lot area, and the balance shall be left as open space. So that means that in R2, you have to have 60% open space. So instead of determining how many units there are, what we come up with is how much needs to be green space.
Right. Where's the
Mhm.
change?
And it's the change that way, and let somebody else figure out then. And maybe FAR, if they can only go in R2 to 35 feet, 3 stories, you know, maybe we just get rid of FAR. Maybe that's another hurdle, and everything is based on how creative you are to get the most units in R2, and maybe it's 40% open space, so they can cover 60%. 40% is still a lot.
Yeah.
If we look at in B1, you know, which is the
And-
corridor of, you know, the highways, I'm trying to see what our open space is there. And I understand one is residential, one is commercial, but, you know, if we don't care on our corridors how much green space, not that we don't care, but you know what I mean.
In square footage, how much is 40% of an acre in square footage?
17,440 square feet. I had that up, Rob, just so you know. I didn't have it in my
Okay,
head.
so if I have an acre of land and I can build on
60% of it.
17,440 square feet of that, how do who is the customer for 17,400 square feet that's going to want to come in and build up to 6 opening price point small homes? As a developer, who's that customer? And who's the customer that wants to come in and do a multi-story townhome development or the like? That's a maximum dwelling, you know, that
Let me just throw some numbers at you, Rob. You're on to something here. So if we do 6 units and it's using 60% of the space, that'd be single level, 4,333 feet of space. That would be the building, and that also include the parking and the driveway. So those are pretty sizable buildings. They're not small anyway.
Just so you know, Jeff has a.
that's part of my question. Is there a developer out there? Is there a customer base in the development world where somebody says, aha, let me come in and use that space for entry-level affordable housing? Or is there a customer in the developer world out there that's going to say, okay, this is as big as we can make them, and we can get this much for them?
Both.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with anyone, but to my mind's eye, I don't see, I see more of a chance, the mission of entry-level housing, I don't see it happening in that. I see somebody maximizing what they can make from a profit degree on the space allowed to a higher level of customer.
What Jeff had his hand up.
So again, thinking outside of the box, trying to be a little bit creative about this. Although keeping it simple is often the right tool, the right thing to do. In this case, you might want to look at some sort of option. So your zoning ordinance defines open space as a permanently dedicated area of open undeveloped land consisting of lawns, shrubs, trees, or other natural vegetation capable of absorbing stormwater. First, there's a fundamental problem there, and that is lawns are not pervious. Lawns become inundated really, really quickly, and then they function like pavement. So calling a lawn a natural vegetation or even pervious is not correct. Rain gardens, vegetated wet and dry detention basins, and related vegetated swales, et cetera, shall be considered open space. So, I mean, one option you could consider would be if the open space is grass, lawn, then there must be 60% of the site open. But if the open space is native prairie plants or rain gardens or some combination of truly pervious stuff, then maybe it could be 20%, and you're going to have far more infiltration than you'd have runoff, even when compared to 60% of fescue or bluegrass or whatever. So, I mean, that's not to overcomplicate it, because it does overcomplicate it a bit, but it might be a way to get you to the higher density that I think Mr. Bell is suggesting, without having to, limit the amount of functional open space.
So have some sort of weighted table that says this accounts for this much pervious surface, and you have a multiplier.
Correct. If for instance, and again, it's a policy thing, right? So you as a plan commission can determine what those numbers are, but just throwing stuff off. If you were to say, if the preponderance of the landscaping is bluegrass, and it could be a percentage or it could be however you determine, then some percent of the site must be maintained in open space. If, on the other hand, it is these other things, again, native prairie plants being the probably preferred choice because of their infiltrative abilities, then you can have much, much smaller. And given, the dolomitic limestone subsurface that you have up there, anything that gets stuff to go down and not out is going to benefit greatly.
I think I hear your point, Rob, and I think that there's more to it than just saying we can have greater density. I absolutely get that.
We're opening up a Pandora's box by trying to use density to drive affordable housing
As the only
and-
tool.
and again, okay, I take a look at what is the developing history over the last couple decades of building in maximum dwelling unit areas in Door County, in Sister Bay and Door County. And
It's been apartment buildings, but Rob,
well, I would, with all the knockdowns and teardowns overall, in an area like that, I'm just, I think you're leaving yourself open to appealing more to somebody who's going to come in and want to put up a ritzy townhome structure that may well serve fine, but has nothing to do with, developing entry-level housing.
I don't think we're even talking about entry-level housing. I think we're talking about options. And you also have to look at on the zoning map, what is currently zoned R2. And I think that makes a huge difference if you look at that map to know exactly where all the R2 is. And most of it is south of, if not all of it, south of the 4257 intersection. So that is, to me, it is, it is not, this is going to come out wrong. I'm sorry. It is not prime property. It is a lot of open vacant land without trees. I'm not saying that some other very nice houses couldn't be built, but mostly what you have going in R2 are apartment buildings. That's what Pre 3 did behind Shopco. That is what Goki was trying to do. That's what Blackstone Harbor or whatever that is called, up behind the daycare. Those aren't apartments. Those are more
Well, then why don't we just get rid of the number of units per acre and just leave it up to the developer how many units he wants there?
That's what Denise was suggesting, I believe.
Then let's
Right.
do that.
And
then
you
let's
base
get
it
rid
off
of-
of green
So-
space.
Something else, I don't think I absolutely don't think you meant to say it how you said it, Denise, but I think we need to be careful because words do matter. You
I
said there
know,
could be
and
very
I
nice
prefaced-
houses. I think what you meant to say is there could be very expensive houses because almost all the houses in Sister Rita that are going up now are nice houses. There are some that are more expensive than others, but
Expensive is what I meant. Yeah.
Yes,
I'm sorry. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. I just redlined that. Did anyone have any concern with that? Are we okay with that?
Yeah, I have a lot of concern with that.
I-
Because all of that goes back into, you can't just redline that without addressing FAR and lot area and width.
I understand what
and
you're
I-
saying, Denise, and I think that's probably a bridge too far for tonight, but I do think you're right. We can't just cross it off and then move on. We've
Right.
got to, the tentacles from that stretch into the zoning code a long way, and if we just hack that out, it's going to be terrible.
Right, so it just needs to be highlighted. And then I think we need, the other homework for us is looking at FAR on if we want to get rid of that and basically changing everything to just how much open space we are interested in. And for each of the districts, and does the lot area and width still pertain? Now, I probably would think that lot area and width still pertains because I don't know that we really have any legal non-conforming or many legal non-conforming lots. But I guess we'll have to have that conversation. So yeah, this is now a good place to stop because this is a much bigger thing by changing that.
Just so you know,
Look-
Jeff, hand up too.
And
Okay.
I just want to say that I'm disappointed that I didn't figure out the hand raising feature until tonight. We've been on Zoom for how long? And Jeff showed that to me. So thank you, Jeff. I can use that for the next couple of meetings I have.
We're not as,
I can't see a hand raised.
it's in the top left corner.
You look at my window.
And then I'm the host, so I can.
Oh, see, I can only see 4 or 5 windows at a time. So,
Yeah, I'm the host, so I get the updates when someone raises their hand.
okay, yeah, I see it now.
I'm
Nate, just
hopeful that
make
the
sure
price-
when you use that, Nate, you raise the full hand and all the fingers together like that hand is on.
I'm hopeful that the hand raising, at least from Mr. Bell's perspective, fulfills the price of admission here. And also kudos for the Operation Market Garden reference. Always appreciate anything dealing with World War II Europe. I think the way you're approaching this right now is something to, the seed that I would suggest planting is where you are right now. Instead of focusing on the number of units, focus on the footprint, focus on the open space, and focus on the setback and height, right? So Bo, what's the maximum height allowable in the village?
35 feet.
All right, so 35 feet means you're not going to have, you're not going to have 5-story buildings, right? 4, maybe 3, almost certainly the max. So if you have the minimum open space set, and whether it be grass or prairie or some combination thereof, and you have a height and you have the setbacks, you've already established a certain number of units in there. Now, if somebody comes before you and says, something, I would like to build this structure with 10 700 square foot units as opposed to, do the math again, 5 1,400 square foot units. That's the affordability option right there. If a developer thinks he can, or he or she can make the return on investment at that number, let them do it, right? That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It makes everything just more, amenable to a developer on what they can and can't do, or an individual. I mean, somebody could build a starter home if they had the money to buy the lot, you know, and then build more and sell them off. You know, it doesn't always have to be a developer. Most likely that's what it's usually going to be, but yeah, we're just opening up options. So, okay. Wow. What page are we on now, Bo? Oh God, only 9?
We're on page 10.
And
Oh. Okay, when's our next meeting?
our next meeting is Monday, August 2nd, and then the next one after that is Monday, August 9th.
Okay, so,
According to Janelle.
yep. Okay, is it appropriate at this time, because we just put a lot more on our plate that's going to affect the whole code, that we request at this time, oh shoot, I just lost everybody. That we request at this time that we need to extend this moratorium.
Yes.
So think 60 days will do it. Do you think? Or
My-
no?
In my opinion, it ends in August. Yeah, September, October, November. I would put at least 3 months on this to get a public hearing out.
Chairman Alberto, can I jump in for a moment?
Yeah,
And forgive me, now I'm going to feel like the wrench thrown in the machine. Did your attorney approved let me rephrase that. Your moratorium is based, if you, I'm trying to put this in a way that I'm not going to step on somebody's toes. So let me do it this way. I'll be clinical. If you've established a moratorium that is based upon a period of time, that moratorium is almost certainly in violation of state law. So if you extend it 2 weeks or 3 months or a year, that's almost certain, as I understand it, almost certainly in violation. On the other hand, if you associate it with a specific task, for instance, the process of updating and adopting an amended zoning ordinance, then the moratorium, and usually they're called interim control ordinances now, but the moratorium will stand a legal challenge. There was a number of cases in the last 10, 15 years that have pretty much upheld that. So just to be safe, you might want to suggest extending it through the process of adoption of the amended zoning ordinance. Then nobody can challenge you.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Sounds good.
what was that wording again, Jeff? Adoption of amended?
Correct, adoption of the amended zoning ordinance. And if you can sneakily, cleverly, and quietly change the word moratorium to interim control ordinance, that will help too.
Okay, our moratorium was very specific. It was not for every kind of development. It was,
It was transient lodging in the B1, B2, and B3 and conditional use permits.
but needless to say, we've dove in a little,
We've branched out.
yeah,
That's moratoria will tend to do that.
yeah. Okay, so do we need then, I'll make a motion that we recommend to the village board that we, I'm gonna have to use the word, continue the moratorium until the adoption of the amended zoning ordinance, otherwise known as an interim control ordinance.
I second.
Is that appropriate enough, Jeff?
Sorry, I muted myself. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, motion by Berto, second by Gretzmacher. Any further discussion?
Okay, Denise, you said otherwise known as what?
Interim control ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Wow, really awesome session, but disappointed only on page 9.
And we had-
But we learned a lot, but we
We
learned
did.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for-
Jeff, you're a wealth of information, and I'm very thrilled and pleased to have you on board with us. Thank you.
That's very kind. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to get legal opinion on CUPs for second dwelling units. Bo is going to forward the fee schedule from the municipal code. Plan Commission is going to review FAR lot area width and green space in all of the zoning districts.
Bo was going to send out the short-term rental, the proposed short-term rental ordinance.
Correct.
And Denise wasn't on that legal counsel that you referenced. Isn't that through the
Murdoch?
newly recommended specialist? And
Well,
that
yes,
and that-
some-
questions
Yes.
before Bo carries out that phone call, there'll be some sort of checking process in place to make sure all the questions that everyone has would be in Bo's hands to pose during that call?
well,
Right?
I think basically it's one question.
Okay.
If everybody has others, they certainly may submit them to Bo. I will not be submitting any.
I thought Nate had some other ones. He can get them to Bo,
On the short-term
Unless-
rental, yeah.
unless I was mistaken.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just one clarification. I mentioned Murdoch because they're the firm that actually wrote the white paper right after Act 59 was passed.
Okay,
They're not the firm I'm necessarily recommending.
okay,
There are
All
other
right.
attorneys I know and I've worked with for many years that are expert on this subject. So I
okay,
will provide that information to Bowen.
Sounds
Thank you.
good.
okay. And we will also have a closed session first on the agenda at our August 2nd meeting.
You wanted the fee schedule as well as the ordinance. schedule.
Yep. I mean, that's all that I have written down.
That's plenty.
Yes, and hopefully in the meantime, Bo, the things that you are still, that are highlighted in fuchsia, you will address.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so we'll have a big conversation and close next time, and then we'll start on page 10.
In the meantime, the board will get that recommendation and hopefully approve it. We can go from there.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Is there a motion to adjourn at 8:35?
So moved.
Motion by Zashki,
Second.
second by Schmitz. All in favor, respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carried. Thanks, everyone. Another
ya.
great meeting.
Oh.
And thank you for going another half hour, Nate.
Bo,
I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad to hear Jeff making me sound a little less crazy, like I'm not the only one with these ideas.
Hey, I made a lot of changes based on.
I know
your
you did.
idea.
I know you did, but sometimes it's good to hear some of these same things from another source. But I know I can see I got the gears in your head turning.